Hello everyone and welcome to the webinar today, Talking Tim. My name is Milu Parvinashtiani and I'll be helping with facilitating today's webinar. This webinar is sponsored by the Federal Highway Administration and is hosted by the National Operations Center of Excellence, or NOCO. As a quick reminder, at NOCO we offer resources for the transportation system management and operations community. On your screen right now, on the right side, you see a box called Useful Links. And from there, you can connect with NOCO through our Knowledge Center, previous webinar recordings, and also case studies that we have. So a few logistics for today's webinar. We are recording the webinar, and that recording, along with the PDF of the presentation slides, will be available on NOCO's website in the On-Demand Learning section. All the attendee phones are on listen-only mode by default, but please stay engaged by using the question discussion pod throughout the webinar. If any questions come to your mind during the presentation, just type them in the question discussion pod, and our moderator will read each question at the end and will ask them from the presenters. That's all I had with the logistics, and I'll hand it over to our moderator for today, Paul Jodoin. Paul, take it away.
Thank you, Nilo, and thank you to the Center of Excellence for your time and great support that you provide, very professional support. We very much appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us today. We have some very special guests today. I'm usually excited about our Talking Tim webinars. My favorite time of the month, and always excited about the presentations. But today's presenters in particular are exciting to me. They're not on normal, usual presentations, and I've seen two out of the three, and I know it's going to be something you all enjoy very much, being TIM professionals. Today we're going to have a report on multi-vehicle connected and automated vehicles, a look into the future, from a report from the National Transportation Safety Board. Dr. Robert Molloy. We're very honored to have the director here with us to provide this presentation. Also honored to have the information on the TIM crash data from First Sergeant Michele Ticho from Virginia State Police. And I probably butchered that name. I apologize, First Sergeant. Subject to arrest in Virginia, probably. And then some connected and automated vehicle and other responder-related research by Michael Mullen from Virginia Tech Institute. So all very exciting, and I know you'll be engaged in two out of the three. Actually, all three are in some form a look into the future. Jim and I already have next month's lined up for the webinar in June. Thinking about July. We're going to start introducing you to the National Traffic Incident Management Executive Leadership Group by asking the members to each take a turn that represent the national organization. So Jim and I coordinate this group with our boss, Mark Hurley, on basically all the responder agency organizations represent organizations, and then some. There's some others that sort of are supportive in nature, like AASHTO and things like that. They're not responders, but they support the responders. So the next month will be the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, DVRPC. Christopher King is doing some cool things. For many years out there, they've had a TIM program dealing with multiple TIM committees. It'll explain to you what they've been doing during this pandemic issue to stay connected with their responders. Also, Georgia has started, did something unique, and they started the virtual National TIM Responder Training. So we'll hear about what they did in Georgia. Kevin Smith will be doing that. And then Ed Ginnikakis from Massachusetts has been working on institutionalization of the training and had some success there, so we'll share that with us. So I will just mention before I pass it over to Jim, Milo, my slides are not moving. See what you can do.
Paul, I'm not sure if there's a next one here. Okay.
So before I pass it off to my partner in crime, Mr. Jim Austrich, I did want to say that the good news is that a lot of exciting things are happening in Jim and our lives relative to traffic incident management, and we are not ready to share them with you, but let's just say that TIM and responder safety in particular has gotten some attention at U.S. DOT headquarters and actually within the U.S. Congress. So that doesn't mean there's going to be a flood of money coming, so don't think that's what it means, but it is some progress. We continue to make progress, and we're very excited about it. And let's just say that Jim and I are earning our money these days, trying to get things going. So with that, Mr. Austrich, if you could take it away.
Thanks, Paul, and good afternoon, everyone. As Paul said, I agree. Today's webinar, extra exciting and so happy. So far, 162, 63 attendees and climbing. So as is customary, we like to go through the statistics, the latest statistics for the responder training nationally, all 50 states, DC and Puerto Rico. You can see here the cover slide as of May 18th. We are well on our way to that 500,000 mark that I mention all the time. Can't wait to actually be able to say 500,000 or plus. You'll see in a later slide, however, that our goal is really to reach well over 1 million. In particular in this slide, note that as I always say, the in web-based training, the online e-learning, however you refer to it, is growing by leaps and bounds, and important for everyone. As you heard Paul say, next month on June 24th, we're going to have Georgia present on their virtual online training. They've taken it upon themselves to provide the training, the 4-hour TIM training to their responder community in Georgia virtually. And we didn't even really have to say anything, Paul and I, they've just done it. And there are several other states that are looking at doing this, including Kansas and possibly Virginia. And that's all I'm going to say right now, that well, I shouldn't say that. We encourage all states with the current crisis that we have, pandemic, even though things are looking up, looking better, but for the near future, I think in-person training is still going to be out of the question. So web-based is the way to go. Nilu, can there's a couple poll questions that I want to just put out there first and, up front and get them out of the way. If you don't mind, please vote here or give us your feedback. Which web conferencing platform does your agency use? That's the question. Okay. The federal level, that's interesting. In Microsoft Teams, that's something that we're engaged heavily at DOT, and from what I understand, other government, state and local as well, federal, followed by WebEx, Adobe. Okay. Well, thank you. And the next one, Nilu, yeah, here we go. Have you considered providing virtual via WebEx or web conferencing TIM training? As I mentioned, Georgia, Kansas, and Virginia. So make sure you join us next month on June 24th to see how Georgia's doing it and share some best practices. Okay. Give it another second here. Okay. This is good. Charity, you're considering. Okay, and please keep Paul and I posted, informed on these efforts on your part, because it's something that we want to, like I said, share best practices and the good work that you all are always doing. Okay, Nilu, thank you. So moving forward, as is customary, the slide here regarding TIM responder struck by fatalities. As of now, at least as of when I last checked and compared with ResponderSafety.com, there are 15 fatalities that have occurred since January. One is too many. We know. Well, we don't necessarily know by experience, but it is absolutely unconscionable and very sad that these struck bys are occurring. It's just horrible. It's just horrible. I can't tell you, the injuries, this is a typo, by the way, the injuries are really more like 100 times, not 10 times, 100 times greater than the fatalities. So as Paul mentioned, we have some exciting opportunities with projects coming down the pike, and to further take a deeper dive into this problem at a national level, understand really try to understand why they're occurring and so on. But the training is one way to mitigate it. And so as you can see, the web-based trainings at NHI, as well as our friends over at ResponderSafety.com, the URLs are posted there, as well as the URL accessing the struck by line of duty desk at, again, our friends at ResponderSafety.com. Here's the map showing the train-the-trainer sessions. You've heard me say it now. I don't have any updates with any other states that are doing state-led programs. We still have a Utah FHWA funded one coming up in July 15th, and they're going to be, or it's going to be in person, but obviously they're planning on the whole social distancing and the whole approach on how they're going to do this in Utah. Next, the map showing the total number of in-person as well as web-based that I mentioned. And then the total nationally by state. Worth mentioning for sure that, is it Alabama? Yeah, I believe Alabama's really starting to kick into high gear. I'll just mention that. And Idaho as well, and New Mexico that have been in the rears, but glad to report that everybody's still engaged. We got to take advantage of this horrible situation in the pandemic. I want to say real quick, I'll only be a few more minutes, but we recently discussed through our ELG that Paul mentioned, executive leadership group meeting that we held virtually last week, actually a week from today, I believe it was. We had a 4-hour virtual meeting with the executives from all the major associations, plus some, including the Institute of Transportation Engineers, IGE, regarding the TIM TIM performance measures and TIM in general practices at the local level, which we want to learn more and take a deeper dive and do everything we can to expand the training at the local level. But this SIP map here shows it, the performance. It's just incredible the amount of work that's been done in the 8 years now since this program was born. And then that lower left corner, you see that over 1 million that we're planning to train. It's actually closer to 2 million. So with that, I wanted to show you the flyer here for the web-based training at NHI. That's at no cost, same as the training provided over at ResponderSafety.com, Responder Safety Learning Network. Awesome work, and I encourage you guys to visit ResponderSafety.com because they've made some changes to their website, and the TIM certificate is available there too. Just want to give you a brief update on the cooperative Cooperative Automation Research Mobility Application, CARMA as it's known. We now call it CARMA Messenger. There's projects, again, towards what Paul mentioned, but we can't release the information yet, but there is a project, fairly sizable project in this area as well, in addition to what we're already doing with FHWA, Turner Fairbanks Highway Research Center. And it will involve not only the vehicle, communications, but also human factors research. So we're really excited about this. Paul and I are going to, as Paul said, we're going to be earning our salaries big time, but nonetheless super exciting. The stand down, how many of you have heard about the firefighter safety stand down coming up this June 14th through the 20th? It was announced a couple months ago now, but definitely approaching quickly. And so kudos to the Fire Service, IAFC, National Volunteer Fire Council, and NFPA, and all the fire service that is highlighting attention or shining the light on firefighters' safety, health, and survival, and in particular the struck by situation. So make a note of that. And of course, later on this year, I'd be remiss if I didn't remind everyone we're, November 8th, second week in November is always National Traffic Incident Response Awareness Week, and an important week, but an important week every day, as we say, to remember what we're doing is saving lives without a doubt. We don't see it, but it's happening. That responder now that's trained to work with his fellow responders and across agencies. And so with that, I thank you, and God bless. Be safe. We'll take questions later. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Jim. So our next presenter is for the National Transportation Safety Board. Director Molloy is honored. We're honored to have him with us today. We all know, we've all heard the National Transportation Safety Board before, but we've never really seen the work that they've done in depth like we're going to see it now. And just a reminder to everybody, I ran into Robert at a safety meeting, and I saw his presentation and asked him to join us. And the same thing with Michael's presentation from VTTI at the end. But if in all your travels, if anyone runs across something or is doing something cool that the nation should hear about, please let us know. We're always looking for interesting topics. We have a few. I'm already just about lined up for July, but we're always hoping to get more topics that we can share with others. And with that, Director Molloy, if you don't mind taking it from here.
Great. Thank you very much, Paul, and thank you for inviting me. Just want to talk basically about some of the work the NTSB is doing in automated vehicles, and it's going to be focused on our Mountain View, California crash that happened in March 28th of 2018. One of the things I want to do is kind of cover just automation in theory. Everyone wants to automate vehicles now. Why is that? How is it being implemented in cars and trucks? Some of the crashes we've investigated, the safety issues that we've identified, and some of the actions we think need to take place to improve the safety. Basically, automation can eliminate human error. That's the thinking. If we take the driver out of the vehicle decision-making, we can get rid of driver error. And why is that important? If you look at what NHTSA finds, it generally crashes involve driver error in over 90% of the cases. So the bus crash on the left was distraction. The truck crash here in Miami, Oklahoma was fatigue. And the crash here, the truck driver was on methamphetamines. So not methamphetamines, a synthetic marijuana. So the people make poor decisions while driving. So automating would be a potential source of preventing that. And it can. You can actually increase productivity, get vehicles to travel more safely together, closer together, taking care of traffic issues, there's reliability, but there is a downside. And with that downside comes that as we put these automated systems in place, we're designing new errors. And those new errors can actually be have more impact than the smaller errors that we had with human drivers. Because as we talk about like platooning trucks and putting trucks together in really tight packages so they can be more fuel efficient, if something goes wrong, it's much more energy in the crash, much less time for people around to react because the vehicles are allowed to be much closer. So we can have bigger crashes. So you haven't really removed all of the error, you've just kind of changed some of it. And some of this we're finding is that people are very comfortable with automated controls, so they may not monitor as well as they should be. So with vehicle automation, what we're looking at now, and this is from the Society of Automotive Engineers, and we're looking at different levels of automation. Mostly right now when you're driving your car, the way you've been driving it all your life, that's kind of zero automation. You're controlling the speed and the steering. Driver assistance, you can have, it's not just cruise control, it's got to be something that maintains distance between vehicles, or you can have auto steer. The partial automation is when it's able to maintain a lane and keep distance between vehicles, but the driver's still critical. And in this case, the driver needs to supervise the automation, make sure they're aware of the traffic situations, know how the automation is limited, and be ready to jump in at a moment's notice. As we get to 3, 4, and 5, that's cases where the vehicle itself is in charge of that kind of supervising how well it's doing. So right now, what we're seeing on the roads today, for the most part, are level 2 systems that you can buy. Level 3 systems and above are generally going to be things that are experimental, being tested in various markets. So basically, you're going to monitor, the autopilot monitors the path, sets a cruise speed, looks for vehicles around it, and adjusts it per those vehicles, either side to side or distance behind, and will brake if something stops in front of them. And so what we've looked at is a number of Tesla crashes. They have this traffic-aware cruise control and auto steer, and they combine those two features to call it autopilot, which is somewhat of a misnomer and has some problems in and of itself. The first crash we have is somebody who's going to work. He's an Apple employee, driving the same route he drives all the time to get to his office. And in that drive routine, he's in traffic, out of traffic. It is just. This day, he's in traffic. He's following a vehicle. And he's approaching interchange where a left exit is coming. He has the autopilot engaged. So here's the sequence, and these are the roadway that he's going on. US 101 is the path he would like to take, and that's kind of below the red box. And SR 85 is the exit that's going off to the left. In the lower right corner, you have a crash attenuator that unfortunately had been hit the week before, and so it had absorbed the crash for that one, and the driver walked away, but had not been reset yet. So as the driver's approaching, he's coming up to this gore area in front of that attenuator, and he's following a vehicle, and they're going about 64 miles an hour. That vehicle's basically directly in front of him. He's keeping a constant distance. And this is basically 8 seconds before the crash. As the vehicles go further along the way, the lead vehicle is pulling away slightly, and all of a sudden there is a slight turn to the left by the following vehicle in automation, the Tesla. That turn was not by the driver. His hands were off the steering wheel at the time. So that began a turn slight to the left. About 4 seconds before the crash, the Tesla has completely entered into the gore area. The other vehicle continues on the way. At this point, the driver is not hands-on wheel, and there's no detecting. And one thing you'll notice is the vehicle is now no longer following that lead vehicle, and so it's starting to accelerate to its preset speed. And so it's now accelerating into that crash attenuator. It ends up hitting the accelerator at 70 miles an hour. I mean, the attenuator at 70 miles an hour. Post-crash, a Tesla then hits an Audi and a Mazda as part of the post-crash. I'm not going to go into this much here, but there was a post-crash fire. The post-crash fire closed the road for about 5 hours as they tried to figure out how to take care of the battery, lithium-ion battery that the Tesla's powered by. And you know, that's something that the board is looking at with first responders' use of these high-powered batteries, because we've investigated 4 crashes where a crash happens, a fire starts, and then they get the fire out and the fire restarts, both on the tow truck, in the vehicle, before, on the roadway before it gets moved, or in the storage facility. So that's something we want to see on the potential improvements for safety there. We've also investigated 3 other Tesla crashes that were all in autopilot mode, Williston, Florida, Delray Beach, and Culver City. In the Williston, Florida crash, the vehicle itself was traveling down a straight road. It was a road with intersections, kind of a more rural type road. And the tractor trailer was making a left turn in front of the Tesla. And unfortunately, the Tesla was in autopilot mode. The driver had not had their hands on the wheel for as long as 20 minutes at a time. They kind of were somewhat inattentive. As the vehicle crosses, there's a camera. You can see the vehicle crossing, a lot of time to potentially brake, but there was no evasive maneuvers at all. The vehicle didn't steer left or right. It just went right underneath the trailer and then basically hit a tree afterwards to stop. Same exact crash happened in Florida several years later. In that crash, the tractor trailer was pulling out from a farm area, crossed over the path of the Tesla, and another vehicle running next to the Tesla slowed down to let the truck proceed across. However, the Tesla did not slow down at all, continued directly into the side of the tractor trailer. In this case, we again had camera, and there was more than about 6 seconds to react to the vehicle crossing in the path, and there was no reaction. Again, we had a look at hands on wheel, which is a measure of driver engagement, and we saw that this driver was not holding onto the steering wheel. And that's somewhat critical because Tesla says that that has to be held on all the time when autopilot is used. The last crash happened in Culver City. In this case, we had a vehicle, Tesla, following another vehicle into a scene that was a previous crash. And there was a fire truck, as you can see, parked across the lane. The lead vehicle pulled out away from the potential fire truck collision, but the Tesla just kept going, following the vehicle. In fact, it accelerated into the back of the fire truck. In this case, luckily, no one was killed. In the previous 3 crashes I mentioned, the driver was killed. So we investigated all of those crashes, and one of the basic safety issues we were finding is, one, just for the Mountain View crash, this picture was taken 2 days after the crash, and you can see as you approach the gore area that the right line delineating the gore area is pretty faded. And so what we believe is that the vehicle continued tracking the solid white line, but it was the line that was more clear, and that's what drove it right into the gore area. We had a hard time replicating that. It could be that the glare was something that was affecting the vision system. Right now, there is no performance testing for these types of vision systems, so there's nothing we can see to say how well it should have performed, because there's no standards for that. I just mentioned this quickly, but this was something, it was damaged 11 days earlier. This was an issue that we did make recommendations on, just for the timely repair. We believe on our analysis that the driver would have survived had the crash attenuator been in repair. They had marked it off with cones and sawhorse, but as you see, that fell over. So it's kind of a side issue, not automation, but important. 3 concepts that are critical to automated vehicle performance. Operational design domain is, where is this system safe to use? Monitoring the driver engagement. Every system out there requires the driver to be engaged and attentive all the time. And the system's basically avoiding things because of a collision avoidance system. Basically, there are limits to what these systems can do based upon, are there crossroads? The collision systems may not be able to detect cross traffic, so you want to not use them where there are crossroads. The markings may be poor. There may be exits that are kind of unusual. So those are places you wouldn't want to use the automation. Many manufacturers limit where their vehicle can be used in a hard software way that it won't be allowed to be turned on outside that. Tesla does not do that. So it does say in the autopilot manual that it's not for use on city streets, not for use on divided with constantly changing traffic, on winding roads, cross traffic, only on divided highways with limited access. 2 of those crashes were on roads that absolutely didn't fit, and the others were, kind of complicated by the unusual exits they had. This is something that shouldn't be happening. The location in Mountain View, we had the left exit, and we had high traffic conditions, is when they're supposed to not use these as being outside of their ODD. Obviously, in Williston, we had cross traffic everywhere. 19 exits within a couple miles, 19 cross streets in a couple miles. So the vehicle can't detect that cross traffic as it goes across. Monitoring. Every one of these systems says the driver is critical for performance. So each of them monitor the driver's performance to make sure they're holding onto the steering wheel. That's how Tesla does it. GM does it with a camera that's monitoring the eyes and make sure that you're looking forward. It's measuring driver's torque, Tesla's method of monitoring. You can see on YouTube people beating that by hanging a fruit off the steering wheel to give it that torque. But what we're finding is a lot of people are operating with their hands off, despite the manuals telling you need to have your hands on. I failed to mention that the Mountain View crash, the gentleman had taken his hands off and had begun playing a game on his phone. So, people are finding other things to do while they put the autopilot on. This was the driver whose disengagement were all the times here in red. You're supposed to be all the time hands-on. Leading up to the crash, he'd just gotten his hands off to play his game and then crashed. These are places where he got warnings. Even though all those times happen, the warnings allow you to go for over a minute without holding the steering wheel, which is quite a long time. One time he also got an audible warning too. And then when he saw the crash, he was just with the hands off. So he's probably distracted. In this case, it was the game, and he was over-relying on the automation. Same thing where we had it in the other crashes. Drivers weren't holding onto the steering wheels for prolonged times in Culver City, Delray, and Williston. Prolonged inattentiveness, even though it's not supposed to be done. People are poor monitors of automation. They tend to trust that it's going to work, and so they'll do other things. And one thing we're finding is monitoring of steering wheel torque. You can hold on to the steering wheel but pay no attention to the road whatsoever, and we think that's a poor measure of engagement. How are we going to go forward here? One, we've asked manufacturers to make sure there are safeguards that the systems can only be used where they're designed, and NHTSA should make that happen. You know, it's a combination that the manufacturers need to do it, but NHTSA needs to make sure they're doing it. The driver monitoring systems need to be approved. We think NHTSA and the SAE should work on a system to develop them so that they're actually effective. And that way we know that the engaged driver is, you know, is engaged. And as we get to higher levels of automation, when the vehicle has to dump control to the driver at kind of quickly, it needs to know that the driver is available. So basically, technology offers hope. I'm a big supporter of automation, big supporter of collision avoidance technology, but it needs to be designed well, and it must consider the human. You know, don't just give the human the difficult task of looking for that rare potential crash and let the car steer something that people do pretty well. Divide the task so that it's optimizing performance, and the infrastructure has to support it. That lines need to be painted well, complexities need to be well understood for the systems. So that's all I have. Thank you very much. And these reports are on the NTSB website. If you ever have any questions, there's my cell phone or my email. Feel free to reach out to me. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Molloy. I don't know if I would have given these guys my cell phone, but no, that was very interesting. It scares me that these automated vehicles are dependent on the quality of the markings on the roadway, because I think we have a long way to go.
Well, that's one of the things we try to tell people is that, as they say, this is coming, it's available today, and it's going to be, you know, the infrastructure doesn't fully support it, and that's why the driver is so critical. But if you don't have a system that monitors the driver, we already have a hard enough time with people driving their vehicle and wanting to use their phones or do other things on their phones. When they think they can turn the vehicle onto autopilot and they can do these other things, it's just a recipe for disaster. Thanks.
Thank you again, Director. Well, I guess we can all plan on some job security for a while, unfortunately or fortunately, but at least it's a peek into the future and some of the concerns, and the whole battery thing, I think, is a concern as well. So with that, we'll move on to the next presentation. You know, I'm very excited when I hear the TIM data collection is not only happening but actually being used. You know, many of you know, have been on this journey with us, Jim and I, trying to push the collection of the data and how important it can be to improving our safety and operations out there. I go way back with Virginia. I remember the first meeting that they invited me to discuss it with the DMV, actually controls the crash report. So this is data from the crash report, and very excited to have the First Sergeant Michele. Ticho, if I'm saying that wrong, I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Ticho.
If you could take it from here so I don't keep bubbling your name. Thank you, First Sergeant.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes, ma'am, loud and clear.
Okay, I just want to make sure I've never done this before. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I have been asked to talk with you all today about how we monitor and share traffic incident management training and TIM performance measures with the Commonwealth of Virginia Statewide Traffic Incident Management Committee. And for the rest of this presentation, it's also good to be known as the Stim Committee. Just some brief background. In 2013, Virginia formed a statewide traffic incident management committee, and this committee consists of representatives from 7 state agencies such as Department of Motor Vehicles, VDOT, Office of EMS, to name a few, and it also includes leaders from local fire, rescue, and law enforcement agencies. The STIM committee's main tasks are to review interagency responder safety practice, promote consistent TIM training for all first responders in Virginia, and audit incident clearance rates, to name a few. To assist in accomplishing these tasks, a TIM training oversight subcommittee was formed to monitor and track information related to these tasks and report out this information to the STIM committee on a biannual basis. And this is where I come in. About 4 months ago, I took over the role of the chair of this TIM oversight committee. So it's now my job and the job of the other committee members to track this TIM training, lane and scene clearance times, and secondary crash information, and give it to the STIM committee on a biannual basis. So now I'm going to go show you how we report these measures out. First, what the STIM committee is interested in is seeing our progress in in-person and web-based TIM training. And I get this information from Ms. Belmore with the FHWA Traffic Incident Event Management Team, and she provides that with me, up-to-date information. The second slide I show to the STIM committee on a biannual basis is the percentage of first responders trained in Virginia to see where we're at, and as you can see, we're at 53.7% trained. So the next several slides is how we report out information to the STIM committee on lane and scene clearance data. The Virginia DMV Highway Safety Office provides me and the other oversight committee members with lane and scene clearance data to present to the STIM committee. The Virginia DMV Highway Safety Office obtains this incident clearance information from data that is recorded in Virginia crash reports that are submitted by state and local law enforcement agencies that work reportable crashes in the Commonwealth of Virginia. This lane and scene clearance information that DMV provides us is one avenue in which the STIM committee can analyze the speed at which incident responders are able to clear areas affected by crashes. Currently, lane and scene clearance blocks are not mandatory fields on the Virginia crash report. However, we have a work group just established a couple weeks ago to look into the feasibility of making these fields on the Virginia crash report mandatory, so we'll have better information. Just so quickly, let me just first explain to you the current definition of lane clearance in Virginia as it relates to the crash report. The Virginia crash report defines lane clearance as the removal of all crash-related obstructions, such as vehicles, debris, from the travel portion of the roadway. Basically, all the travel lanes are clear. Scene clearance is defined in the Virginia crash report as the removal of all crash-related activity from the entire roadway, including emergency shoulders on which the crash occurred. For a scene to be considered cleared, the crash investigation must be complete, or all crash-related vehicles and items must be moved to a location such as a business parking lot where the normal flow of traffic is not disturbed. So this is one of the slides that I will be presenting to the STIM committee. This is how we present the lane and scene clearance. We obtain the total number of reportable crashes worked by Virginia State Troopers by division headquarters. The Virginia State Police has 7 division headquarters as seen in the left-hand column. So for example, Division 1 troopers who worked at the Richmond metro area worked a total of 5,909 reportable crashes in 2019, as shown in column 2. Of those 5,909 reportable crashes, 5,268 had lane and scene clearance information on submitted crash reports, as shown in column 3. Then we calculate the percentage of crashes with lane and scene clearance information. So if you look at column 4, 89% of the crash reports submitted by Division I troopers had lane and scene clearance times. And then we add all those up and then do it overall for the state as seen in below, at the very bottom in red. Finally, we report if there was any increase or decrease in reporting from the previous year. As you can see in yellow at the top, how we show this information. We had a significant decrease in reporting in 2019 compared to 2018, a 16% decrease in reporting clearance information. Our goal is to have 100% reporting, and we're hoping future mandatory reporting of this info on the crash report, outreach to those divisions with lower reporting, and additional training will increase the reporting of these times on crash reports by Virginia troopers. So that's, since I've taken over this chair, that's one of my to-do list things, among many things. We also report to the Stim Committee the same clearance information for local law enforcement, and it's reported for 249 local police agencies across the Commonwealth. So for Virginia State Police, we have 77% compliance with submitting lane and scene clearance information to, in Virginia crash reports, and as you can see on the slide, local law enforcement has only 22% compliance, so that's another one on my to-do list, is to try to figure out how I can best reach out to so many different local police agencies to get this number up. We also provide the Stim Committee average lane and scene clearance times by division headquarters and statewide average lane and scene clearance times, as you can see from the chart above. For example, overall statewide average lane clearance, as you can see in bottom of column 2, the average lane clearance time was 53 minutes, and overall average scene clearance time, as you can see in bottom of column 3, average scene clearance time was 1 hour and 33 minutes. We then compare this information to last year's data to see if lane and scene clearance times have increased or decreased from the previous year. As you can see on the top of the slide, that's where we report that information. We also provide to the Stim Committee lane and scene clearance information by time of day, pretty much 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. We report it by division headquarters, and then we also calculate the overall statewide data by time of day. We also report out clearance types by road type, interstate versus non-interstate roadways. Again, we break down the information down by division headquarters and then calculate the overall state average. Also, with the help of the Virginia DMV Highway Safety Office, the TIM Training Oversight Committee obtains secondary crash data to present to the TIM Committee. Just like lane and scene clearance information, secondary crash data is recorded in Virginia crash reports too. This secondary crash information assists our Stim Committee to analyze secondary crash data in Virginia. Currently, the secondary crash block is not a mandatory field on the crash report, just like lane and scene clearance time. However, we're looking into the feasibility of making this mandatory or not. Let me first go over what the Virginia definition of secondary crash as it relates to Virginia crash reports. A secondary crash is defined as an accident that is directly related to the traffic backup or queue from a previous crash on the same roadway in either direction. Secondary crashes must only be related to the previous accident queue and not by other highway incident, debris, or other situations. This definition is narrow, and my TIM Training Oversight Committee just formed a work group to take another look at the secondary crash definition we currently use to broaden the scope of what data we capture. Based on this DMV provided info, we provide secondary crash info by division headquarters and overall statewide secondary crash information to the Stim Committee. In column 2, we report total number of secondary crashes that were reported on the Virginia crash report. We then report total number of crashes as seen in column 3, and then determine the total percentage of crashes that were secondary crashes. And then the parentheses up there in column 2, the information on the left of in the parentheses is 2017 stats and 2018 for the right. Also to the Stim Committee, we provide information on scene clearance times by type of crash work by Virginia State Police troopers. As you can see, we asked DMV to provide us information for 2017 and 2019 to see if there have been any increases or decreases in scene clearance times during a 24-month period to get a better global view of it. And as you can see on the slide, fatal crash scene clearance time in this 24-month time frame was reduced by 15 minutes. Commercial motor vehicle crashes reduced by 50 minutes, and injury crashes reduced by 60 minutes. We've also asked DMV to give us Virginia State Police average lane and scene clearance times for 2017 and 2019 to see if there, what globally, if there was any increases or decreases in that 24-month period. And as you can see, the lane clearance, there was an 18-minute decrease, scene clearance 19-minute decrease, and lane to scene 2-minute decrease. And then we also get information for local law enforcement too, and provide that same information to the Stim Committee. So this concludes my presentation on how the Virginia TIM Training Oversight Committee reports information on TIM training efforts and lane and scene clearance times and secondary crash information to the Stim Committee on a biannual basis. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, First Sergeant. That was awesome. That was awesome. You know, I'm not a numbers guy, but some of the numbers there are very cool. The reduction and the 2-year reduction in clearance time, all the categories, the fatalities and the commercial vehicles, significant. And then even saving a couple of minutes off of clearance times are impressive. What I would love to see that throughout the country is the breakdown by divisions, right? The division commanders are seeing their numbers, and then their bosses, as it goes up the chain of command, are seeing the breakdown. Arizona does that. DPS does that as well. I've always thought that was really the best way to keep folks focused on their business when they have to report the clearance times. I also like that they're breaking it down by local agencies. That's something that Jim and I are working on, expanding out into the arterials, into local cities and towns. And so having data on that is also, you know, is also important. And then knowing how much data is being collected through the crash report and how much is not. And then the idea of making it mandatory, that's just music to my ears. So that's the way we move the nation forward, everybody. So really, you know, want to recommend that you keep pushing in that regard. So if you have any questions for the First Sergeant, please type them in, and at the end we'll try to get to some more questions if you have time. So thank you again, First Sergeant. And
thank you.
Yep, thank you. Up next is Michael Mollen from Virginia Tech Transportation Institute, doing some research. I heard about some of this research directly from him at a meeting through IACP. And again, it's a peek into the future. Some of the cool things they're doing that are they do a lot of things, but some of it are responder related. So I thought it would be a nice presentation to have for this Talking TIM webinar. So with that, Michael, take it away.
All right, thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. All right, so I'm at the Virginia Tech Transportation Institute. I'm the director of the Center for Technology Development and Deployment. And our role in that group is to really help organizations take brand new technologies and deploy them in the field, either through small stage deployment or demonstrations or a variety of different deployment techniques, and to be able to study those things to understand where the benefits are, what the costs of doing that are, and where there are still gaps between what the technology can do today and what it needs to do to be successful tomorrow. First, I'm going to give a little plug here for the home office. It's the Virginia Tech Transportation Institute. For those of you who don't know us, We've been around for about 30 years, and we're I think by most measures, one of the largest transportation safety institutes in the United States. We're very much focused on safety. More than half our staff are in human factors and safety types of work. We run a wide variety of projects, both with government sponsors, but also with proprietary industry partners. And so we get a really good look at a lot of the new technologies that are available out there in both connected and automated vehicle development, and we have a chance to get hands-on with a lot of these things. In addition, we also develop our own automation capabilities for a variety of different use cases, and we have the engineering capabilities and support to do that. Many of our faculty that are associated with the center, or the institute, I'm sorry, are not teaching faculty, which means we are able to focus straight in on doing the research work and spend a little less time being worried about the educational and student component of what we do, and focus more in on the research needs. That being said, we still do support a wide variety of students and get their involvement, because often they have fresh ideas and really have novel ways of thinking about how to solve some of the major problems that face us in these product areas. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I think the prior presenter covered the different levels of automation. There are, I think, different aspects to each of these that can make them challenging. I think as was outlined, that level 3 in the middle with conditional automation, where a driver is required to be able to jump back in and take control without potentially a lot of situation awareness, can be a very challenging, I guess, one to work with. The developments that we're focused on in automation right now are mostly centered around level 3 and level 4 deployment, and so that means either making a system that it will operate in the majority of the world, if you will, but really requires the human to take back over again, or one that potentially could operate full-time and is expected to be fully functional at all times when it's within its operational design domain. I think we've heard a lot of hype about automation, and those who understand technology have probably seen this hype cycle diagram before. This is kind of where we were in 2019, and you can see that the autonomous level 4 driving, which has been very much hyped in the last few years, both with product announcements, but a lot of investment funding and a lot of, I guess, forward-looking announcements from companies that they're going to have either fleet level level 4 autonomous driving systems being deployed, or some of those that could be even procured by individual personal drivers. We're kind of past the hype part of it now, where everybody's very, very excited about what the possibilities are, and now we're entering what we call the trough of disillusionment, which means we understand the problem, which means we understand the challenges that are there, and we've solved many of the, I guess, the 90% of the 100% of the problems, but that last 10% is proving to be stubborn and very challenging to get past. And some of the crashes that were outlined again in the prior presentation maybe give a glimpse into what could happen if we don't address the full 100% of the problem that we need to solve before we can deploy these things and make them safe. And so in terms of where we are in the process of doing testing and deployment, there are quite a few companies that are out there that have invested, as I mentioned before, very significantly in the development, and there's a couple of different test environments. Often these test environments are located in places with what I would call, pretty favorable weather and favorable roadway conditions, wide open and very straightforward, as opposed to some of the other areas that they could be deployed in. And I think while advancements are being made all the time, I think that we have a little ways to go yet. I'm not going to go through each and every one of these, but there are many testing programs on the road. In addition, there are other types of automated driving system testing programs. Some involve like low-speed shuttles that you see in very restricted areas, with sometimes mixed with regular traffic, and most of the time not. We also have package delivery that's being supported by a few of the players out there that are very much focused on delivering the goods that we buy on the internet and through other sources. And then we also have trucking, which has a real economic advantage to getting automation in play in terms of how they need to operate their vehicle fleets. For all those automated driving systems that are being tested and deployed, there are a variety of conditions on the road that can be very challenging, and we view work zones and crash scenes as being in particular, really huge challenges. Number one, they're temporary, and sometimes they can result in an unconventional layout to a roadway, like the picture shows there. Potentially, you're transferring the lane of travel to the opposite side of the road using a flagger, and some of that might even, require that the vehicle has to violate the rules that it has been so carefully trained to understand. Many of them require detailed information, or would be better if they had detailed information rather than just the vehicle's own sensors to provide information about how to navigate them. And sometimes that level of information is available to the vehicle, and sometimes it's not. It really depends a little bit on the jurisdiction, and we're still working on the standardization of that data, what it looks like, what it's going to include, how rapidly it needs to be refreshed, and where it will be sourced from. And I think we have a little way to go until we actually have that in place. Actually, we have quite a ways to go. When a human driver approaches one of these types of scenes, oftentimes you're getting audio or visual or even gestural commands, but being given by someone on site. Those are pretty difficult things to standardize on a regular basis, and oftentimes require more of a two-way communication capability where you have a person giving the commands, and they want to see that the operator of the vehicle is understanding and responding to those commands so that they can feel safe and they can understand that the vehicle is going to do what they want it to do. In addition, the scenes are often chaotic. There's debris strewn about, potentially random vehicle orientations that you wouldn't normally expect in a certain roadway, including being on their sides or upside down, and unexpected pedestrian activity. Folks that are just trying to help, trying to get to the scene or trying to clear it. Those are all things that can come up quite unexpectedly. And then to make all that worse, things like emergency lighting, fire, dust, and smoke can all make it very difficult for an ADS sensor system to be able to consistently pick up the information it needs from the scene. So I think our conclusion is that ADS or automated driving systems could be more effective if they're getting information from multiple sources to be able to piece that all together and make sure that there aren't any gaps in the understanding. About a little over a year ago, the Federal Highway Administration had set aside funding for doing automated driving system demo programs, and there was a notice of funding opportunity. The focus of this was really to demonstrate level 3+ automated driving system technologies and get feedback about the deployment, but also to provide data that would allow the organizations to evaluate the readiness of ADS and where there are gaps and what is going to be required to get ADS deployed on the road. And so the goal here is to really put together a demonstration that shows the safe integration of automated driving systems into some challenging part of the nation's transportation system. And we want to be able to gather enough data and provide enough, understanding here to be able to inform rulemaking as to how ADS can move forward and under what conditions. And so ultimately, the USDOT made 8 awards, and the total amount of funding was about $60 million total. All projects were required to have a timeline that was up to 4-year duration. Our particular project was a 3-year duration. And so we were fortunate enough at the Virginia Tech Transportation Institute to be able to win 2 of these awards. One of them is with a sister division here at VTTI, and it is related to trucking fleet. And I'm not going to touch on that here really today, but it's about how do you work automated vehicles into fleet environments in commercial trucking. My ADS demo project involves how do you build ADS and have them operate in the challenging dynamic scenarios that they're going to see. And that includes, in our case, both interactions with public safety professionals that are doing their jobs on the side of the road, but also in a cooperative automated driving scenario. So the demonstration concept that we put together is really to come up with a variety of scenarios that show how Level 4 could interact with public services providers. And I think initially we are building upon a body of work that was completed by CAMP. And for those who don't know, CAMP is a consortium of automakers that work to solve pre-competitive challenging technology related types of problems. In a previous couple of years, we did some work for them to do a hierarchical task analysis of how human drivers interact with public safety professionals as they're doing their work. We are building upon that body of work to now add work zones in there because work zones have some similarities as to how they I guess, would appear to an automated driving system on the road, in that they do alter the driving environment. They are temporary in nature. Oftentimes they are irregular, and there is an opportunity for the infrastructure to provide information back to make them safer to operate. And I think we've also opened up the notion that we're going to include also safety service patrol operators and also tow operations as part of this program as well. So the safety service operators are oftentimes functioning as a first responder in these cases, because they're first on scene oftentimes in establishing and securing the scene, and that's one of the most dangerous times during the response profile. So we're going to come up with certain technological solutions that can help support these ADS vehicles and demonstrate them through this program. In addition, we're also looking at cooperative automation as well. So how can we make automated vehicles cooperate together to improve, I guess, the flow of traffic on the road? One of the goals of the program really was to get technical organizations and research organizations and technology providers together to collaborate. And we put together a good team here. We worked with VDOT for quite some time, helping them develop and manage technological solutions for connected vehicle environments. And so we're going to continue that going here with this program. We work with Transurban. They run the express lanes in Northern Virginia along I-95, and they have a very, very capable infrastructure system that we may lean on to provide really high-resolution information to the automated vehicles that will be part of our demo. And we have our Global Center for Automated Performance and Simulation. This is a sister organization that does a fair amount of simulation and development of data packages that can be used for automated system developers. We also have the International Association of Chiefs of Police, International Fire Chiefs Association, and local providers as well, including the Virginia State Police, Blacksburg Fire, and we're going to be reaching out to additional providers in the future to help to get their inputs. And again, we want very much a national sort of input and feel to this, so that we're not just optimizing for a particular region, but we also focus on things like rural environments, other parts of the country where they may address and deal with incidents in maybe a slightly different way than they would in the local area. I mentioned that we had automakers on board as well, so we had the CAMP consortia group, so we have Ford, GM, Hyundai, Mercedes-Benz, and Nissan will also be contributing to the program. So what's our rationale for choosing these two, these two dynamic types of scenarios? Well, one, interaction with public services is mandatory, right? There's no way to get around it. That's going to happen on the roadway while we still have a mixed fleet, and it's going to be necessary to be able to interact with them. And we want some standardization to that, and we want to make sure that we give both sides of the equation, both the ADS developers and the public safety professionals, some level of comfort with how they're going to react to each other moving forward. Otherwise, it'll remain a key barrier or will be regional only in its reach in terms of the ability to deploy. We also know that there have been a lot of promises made about what the improvements in the traffic system could be if automated driving systems cooperated together. Those include things like shorter headways, potentially higher speeds, maybe operating with tighter lane restrictions and so forth. Those things are only really going to be, realized if the vehicles are working and talking together as opposed to individually doing their own thing at all times. And so this is a really great opportunity for us to show how they can do that in a safe manner while also being able to interact with the challenges of the public safety and work zones types of issues they're going to face on the road. So we really kind of thought about, okay, if this is going to be a collaboration, we have multiple folks that are going to be able to provide input. The OEMs and automated driving system developers, they're there, they're looking for opportunities to improve how their vehicles react. They're looking for opportunities to standardize in a way that they'll be able to operate in various parts of the country without a lot of customization and a lot of understanding of local knowledge. The infrastructure owner-operators, they really want to understand how they can facilitate safe deployment. What can we do beyond painting better lines in order to make this all better? Public safety providers really just want, obviously, a seat at the table to understand how things are going to react, but also, how should they do their job and what can they expect from the automated driving systems and how can that potentially help improve safety? So our role here is to build consensus amongst those folks, leverage the data that we have available from our partners and through our own operations, and then build vehicles and demonstrate them in these various different types of scenarios that we've outlined earlier. From that, we want to be able to develop packages of data then that can be used both for developing better automated driving systems, but also to serve as training and guideline for how public safety professionals can apply technology in certain scenarios or even procedural changes to be able to better interact with automated driving systems. So we're really set up to accomplish 6 different tasks here. The first one is that we're going to be developing solutions for corridor optimization. And you heard a definition of the operational design domain earlier, and it does include information about a variety of different conditions, including things like the speed limit on the road, the traffic levels, whether or not there's an incident, whether there's a work zone, perhaps there's a weather event occurring in a particular area, perhaps there's degraded infrastructure in a certain area. Our job is really going to be to develop a system that will, in real time, support giving that information out to the automated driving systems that are in the region so that they can have a good look ahead and be able to anticipate a little bit better, what is going on the roadway environment in front of them. Our partners at Transurban have a very, very capable traffic operations center with a wide variety of sensors and full video coverage from end to end. And we're going to use that to feed in the information that's going to go into the messages and the source data that will be used to support that data flow. So we're going to develop a message set that will then take that information and in real time send it out to vehicles that are operating in the environment. And the resolution of that will be up to less than a third of a mile per segment. And they'll get information about how traffic is flowing, whether queues are forming, whether there's been a traffic incident, and be able to anticipate that, including things like repositioning themselves in the lane, potentially slowing their speed, potentially being used as a tool to control the flow of traffic on a roadway environment. So if you think of an application like dynamic speed harmonization, where if the vehicles are driving on the roadway, if you get enough density of vehicles that are actually responding to speed commands that are coming out of the traffic operations center, you can ultimately begin to control the flow of traffic and potentially help avoid traffic queues and potentially maybe some follow-on crashes that might occur due to the shock wave effect that we often see in those scenarios. So we'll be developing those systems and defining what they should do, and we'll get a lot of feedback from the OEMs and also the IOOs about how and what is available and how that can be deployed in an effective manner. And then we're also going to develop this high-level cooperative scenario where we're going to try to control the flow of traffic with a number of automated vehicles on the roadway and show how that can be done in a safe manner and improving, I guess, the operations in that area. I mentioned before that we're building on that previous camp work. Again, there's a variety of different phases to response to a traffic incident, and we have broken that down into different segments and then done the task analysis within. And so we're looking at the different interaction requirements there. Some of those are informational, some of those are physical, and so we're trying to break it up and trying to figure out what technical solutions could be applied that are feasible, I guess, to be deployed in broad scale. So, for example, if I'm approaching a crash scene and there's an officer on site that is trying to secure the scene, is there something we can do within, let's say, like the light that's in the flashlight, so that an automated vehicle can pick up a signal through that flashlight? Can we have the automated vehicle be able to respond to hand gestures if they're exhibited properly? Can we potentially use radios to communicate messages back and forth to help the vehicle and the responding officer understand what to do? Are there things that we can build into the exterior appearance of the vehicle to let the officers know that they're responding? So this might be some kind of light or some other kind of solution that lets the officer know that it recognizes the situation and that it's going to respond as expected in a particular scenario. So we're going to be scanning very much for the different kinds of technological solutions that could be applied here. And then once we have those steps together, we'll choose a variety of these different scenarios, again, based on cost, feasibility, and practicality, and then put together the demonstrations to show how they're going to work. And we'll definitely get this out in front of the public safety folks and get their input in terms of those feasibility and practicality and acceptance types of issues as well, to make sure that we don't come up with things that will never be adopted in practice. Task 3, we actually are going to, this is the fun part for us, which is to build the actual reference demonstration vehicles. So we are looking at what the most capable platforms can be. Again, as I mentioned before, we here at VTTI develop these kinds of systems and have done them before. As long as it's for a limited operational design domain, we'll be able to build up the vehicles to be able to respond in particular with the technological solutions that are involved. And so we will look at staging a variety of scenarios to show how the vehicles will operate in these given conditions and how effective each of the different technological solutions are. We hope to have a vehicle platform that has a high capacity to have a lot of ride-along participants, and we also want to have a really high fidelity data collection capability. So this means perhaps LiDAR and radar and camera solutions that are beefed up over what a normal ADS would have, so that we have plenty of data after the fact to be able to create simulations and potentially recreate these scenes in a data environment. And then we'll build those vehicles and prepare them for the demonstrations. We'll also build out the TOC applications that we talked about before, so anything that's necessary in the Traffic Operations Center to support that ODD design tool that'll be operating in real time. We'll get that together. Any of the connectivity requirements, so any kind of radios, or maybe it's cellular data, maybe it's short-range communication, whatever's required along the corridor, we will install those things. And then we'll also build a dynamic speed harmonization application to be able to monitor the flow of traffic, and then to be able to control, provide prescribed speeds for the ADS to operate at, to be able to control the flow of traffic. And this includes both individually or in a platooning operation. So it might be multiple vehicles driving together and they have a certain headway. They have been given a lane selection choice and a speed to drive, and they'll be out there doing that hopefully in a safe manner. And we'll be able to understand what the benefits are and the ability of those types of cooperative scenarios, or cooperative platoons, to be able to control the flow of traffic. Task 5 is where we develop the, design and actually do the demonstrations themselves. So we're intending to do at least 3 high-profile demonstration events and a lot of preparation and planning for those. At least one will be in Northern Virginia. Probably 2 of those will be in Northern Virginia. There might be a few scenarios that may be a little too dangerous to try to implement on a public roadway, so we'll do those on our test track facility that we have down here in Blacksburg, Virginia. And we'll focus each of these demonstration events. Maybe one of the periods would be for the infrastructure owner-operators, focusing on those solutions. The other would be on the OEMs or automakers and what they're most interested in, and then another on the public safety professionals that are also interested. And some of our partners, we hope to have, through outreach, be able to have them, participate in these events. So we would have people come in from different jurisdictions and help us stage different types of emergency responder and public safety professional responses with their own equipment and so forth. And we would stage those things and then be able to operate and show how the systems work. There will also be some focus group sessions where we're getting feedback from any of the participant groups about how effective they think the solutions were or could be, or what might need to be changed. So after we've collected all of the data, and that the data include a variety of different sensors on the vehicles, it includes the infrastructure data set itself, including the messages that will be communicated back and forth through V2I communications between the Traffic Operations Center and the automated vehicles. And then much of the camera data will also have sensors on the public safety professionals that are part of the demonstration process. So all that data will be compiled together. There'll be a number of different data sets that are created, and it will be packaged into different scenarios that will be posted to a public website, including the video that was part of the program. And so it will be possible then to download this data and use it for extended automated driving system development processes. So that means they can take the data, feed it in through their own systems, and understand how would their system have reacted, where are the flaws in the technological solutions that we developed, if there are any, and then what can be done to improve them. So that all is really being set up to be a source of data for ADS development, but there's also a great opportunity there for doing public safety training as well. So using these videos as an example of the right way to react, or to show folks through a training program how ADS that are applying these solutions should or could react to them. And so that'll, again, all be hosted on a public portal. As I mentioned, ours is a 3-year program, but we are on the hook to, host the data for, 5 years after the end of the program, so it should be made available to the general public for doing this type of work. From a timeline perspective, we just recently got kicked off, and I'm talking about this very much in the sense of what we're planning to do in the future. It's because we did have some contracting delays. It took a bit to get everybody underway, but now that we do have them underway, we're right in the process now of developing these technological solutions, and also looking at what needs to be done on the corridor. And here near the end of summer, at the beginning of fall, we'll start to actually build the reference platform vehicles and the traffic operations center applications. The demonstrations themselves won't be until about the end of the first quarter of 2022, and then the data collection will pretty much run in parallel and will extend beyond the end of the program. So we're looking forward to getting busy with it. We very much would like to have any kind of partnership outreach from any of those folks out there who want to participate in the program, and we'll be happy to come back and share, I guess, intermediate results or maybe give invites to the demonstration processes themselves for any of you that are interested in coming along for the ride. That's what I had to speak with you about today. So I think, Paul, I guess it's back to you, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Again, a lot of information as to where we're going with the future. Aren't you doing some research with like responder safety vests and things like that as well, Mike?
Yes, we are. So yeah, so we have a system that's it's a smart vest system that's got lights, it's got audio, and it's got vibration tactors. The wearer can be given a signal either from an approaching vehicle that's on a collision course or when that wearer steps out of a geofence boundary. And we have tools to be able to mark out and set up those boundaries pretty easily, so that if you had a crash scene, you could potentially kind of show how that would work. Yeah, so that's something that's in development, and we have an additional, I guess because of the COVID situation, we had a bunch of these projects that were supposed to wrap up in about early June of this year, and we're planning to have a demonstration of showing all these tools in, I guess, in concert, working with one another, and we are going to have to reschedule that now. It looks like now at least maybe like till early fall to where we can get people in the same place and time. I don't know, your crystal ball is as good as mine as to when that will actually be, but we hope to have a bunch of video and so forth to show of that, and because of those demonstrations did not come together in time, that's something that we haven't been showing too much of at this point while we prepare for that demonstration, if that makes sense. Yeah,
great. Great.
Yep.
Again, thanks, Mike. I appreciate you taking your time. I know all the presenters today are extremely busy, and we're just so pleased to have you. I wanted to comment on, people are asking the first sergeant for the copy of the crash report. I think that is awesome. Good idea. Let's go wave it in front of some people there in your jurisdiction, so that you know. The crash report is controlled by the Traffic Records Coordinating Committee that is in each state, and it often can be painful to be to approach that committee and to get something changed or added to it. Some states have already included it over the last few years from the Everyday Counts initiative, but if you go to your TRCC, the Traffic Records Coordinating Committee, mention to them that 2 out of the 3 recommended roadway clearance time and incident clearance, roadway clearance time and secondary crashes are in the MUC, Minimum Model Uniform Crash Criteria. It's the Bible by which the crash report is developed. So that always helps when you go to the Traffic Records Coordinating Committee, if you can point to the MUC. And if you want to know more specifically where that is in the MUC, let me know, and we'll point you in the right direction. So I don't see too many. I do see some questions, but it looked like they were all, they're all been answered. There's one, is two-way communication technology being studied for use in work zones? Mike or Rob, do you know the answer to that?
I'll answer. This is Mike for BTTI. Yes, we are developing those capabilities, and so the question is what data. I know that there are a number of different work zone data initiatives that are going on in parallel that are working to improve both the resolution and the availability of work zone data, and I guess more of the detail of what is available. We have a tablet-based application called the Work Zone Builder that we develop that allows the folks who design and set up work zones to tap out, I guess, their work zone and effectively build it using a set of tools. And normally that means applying a template, and the tablet sort of figures out where everything should go, and then the individual can adjust it to how they want it to be. That information gets pushed into a system in our connected vehicle environment and then can be made available via public API or through the connected vehicle systems so that they can consume that data. So that's one option. The second option is that smart vest that I mentioned, that individuals who are working within a work zone, and maybe this is just the individuals that are in high-risk areas or everywhere in the work zone, can have the vest. The vest goes to a data consolidation unit. That data consolidation unit can broadcast their position in real time out to vehicles and do the, the coordination of collision algorithms to understand where the threats are occurring and managing that part of the process. That data can also be pushed up into a cloud environment and made available to other users as necessary and that might be folks like Waze or I don't know, whoever the other, roadway environment providers are, to show that, hey, there are workers on the side of the road ahead and this work zone is live, and there are, if there are particular types of threats or dangers, then they can be managed that way as well. There are other types of devices, like the icon device is another one that simply provides information about when the work zone is active or not active. So there's a variety of different means that are being tested for efficacy, at this point, and we are keeping our eyes on those and helping to contribute to their development.
Well, excellent, excellent. Yeah, so we're before I wrap up, I just wanted to Jim Austrich from our team is in the middle of all this stuff as well from the federal highway standpoint, and we're looking to do some activities related to connected automated vehicles and then respond to safety that we talked about earlier. But Jim, do you have anything you want to talk? We have a few more minutes here.
Thanks, Paul. I just want to add, to Angela Barnett's comment earlier in the chat pod and subsequent ones, the other champions here that are asking First Sergeant Ticho for crash report, but in general, Angela's point about, I think it was Angela, about having more states, provide this, add these elements to the crash report that you just mentioned, Paul, because this is where we're in desperate need that other states follow suit. For some reason, we just have a hard time. We have our usual cast of states, if you will, that Paul and I always tap, but we need more participation at a national level, as Paul said, whether you have to, engage your TRCC or others to get the ball rolling. Please do so, and it's so important. Other than that, Paul, I just want to thank Robert and Mike and First Sergeant Ticho for great presentations. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim. And there is a way, I didn't identify it, but there is also a way through the MUC to collect responder struck bys. It's not as clear cut as the other TIM performance measures, but there is a way to do it, and some folks are doing it. And ironically, in Arizona, Angela had brought that up, but it is happening in Arizona, where Angela is from. We're giving Angela way too much time today on this chat pod and on this conversation. But Angela's a good friend to both Jim and I, and we enjoy her energy and her help.
Yeah, well, as long as we're all doing that, I'll join in too. So Angela really has raised my awareness to the plight and the situation with the tow operators as well, which is why we have added tow operations to the ADS demo project. So we appreciate her enthusiasm, and we will be leaning on her for input and as the program unfolds. So thank you again.
Yeah, she's awful shy, so I don't know. But as you can see from the chat pod, I'm in trouble with Angela. It won't be the first time, but anyways, have a little fun here, and with that, I think we'll close it. We have 1 minute early, but thanks so much. You guys are doing a great job. We're going to have some exciting information next month from Jim and I. We hope, as long as things don't fall apart. But we really appreciate everything that you have been doing. Jeff Kaufman, that has not kicked off. I don't know what's going on with that question, Jeff. But yeah, I have the same question as you, Jeff. But anyways, thanks again. It was a great conversation, great presentations, and please be safe out there. We really appreciate your participation. Look forward to talking to you all next month. Thanks again.